talk about a setback for the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration at the southern border. A federal judge blocked the president's plan to restrict access to the nation's asylum system. So let's get to CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Camilo, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you talk to us about this ruling?
Well, this is, on its merits, a significant setback for President Trump's aggressive immigration agenda, Mugo, because a federal judge has found that he lacks the authority and also the legality to issue by proclamation an effective shutdown of the U.S. asylum system at the U.S.-Mexico border. The policy at the center of this lawsuit has been the main border measure that border officials have relied on since President Trump took office for a second time in January to restrict asylum and also to deport migrants who are crossing into the U.S. illegally. Under this proclamation, the president gave border officials this extraordinary power to just turn people back to Mexico or to deport them to their home country without screening them for asylum and allowing them to see a judge, as is typically required under U.S. immigration law. And the premise of that policy was that the U.S. is facing an invasion by migrants. But the judge said that that is not allowed under U.S. law. However, the caveat here, Mugo, is that this order will be stayed or paused for about 2 weeks, and it is possible that a higher court could suspend it before it actually takes effect.
All right, Camilo, let's talk about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. That's the man who was mistakenly deported to a prison in El Salvador and then brought back to the U.S. He's now detailing his experience in that prison. What's he saying?
Well, according to court filings filed by his lawyers, Kilmar Abrego Garcia was subject to psychological torture and beatings in that notorious Salvadorian prison known as Secot, in that Central American prison. He alleges in this court filing that he also was deprived of sleep and that he heard overnight other people, other detainees who he believes are gang members, harming each other. And again, he alleges that his constitutional rights were violated. The lawyers in this case are asking the federal district court in Maryland to make sure that Kilmar Abrego Garcia can go back to his family in Maryland after he's released from federal criminal custody, because remember last week, Mugo, this man was supposed to be released from federal criminal custody, but his lawyers actually asked for that release to be delayed out of concerns that their clients could be deported to a third country if released from that custody in Nashville by the U.S. Marshals. So this case will continue to be litigated, but this is the first time we're hearing directly from Mr. Abrego Garcia about the conditions that he faced in that prison in El Salvador.
Yeah, those sound really, really brutal, the conditions he described there. And there's a new detention center in Florida that will begin operation today. Tell us more about the latest with what's being called Alligator Alcatraz.
Well, this is a facility in the middle of the Florida Everglades that state officials offered to the Trump administration to support its mass deportation and mass detention goals, really, in the U.S. when it comes to immigration efforts and the president's sweeping policies on this issue. We know that according to Florida state officials, the first group of detainees have already arrived to be detained at this site, and they will be held there, according to officials, on a temporary basis while the U.S. adjudicates their claims and is able to determine whether they can be deported to their countries of origin or not. Again, this is civil immigration detention, so it is not supposed to be a punishment or punitive. It is only designed to hold people while they await detention and deportation. But of course, advocates are very concerned about conditions in this facility and whether the facility actually meets the standards of care for civil immigration detainees, Mugo.
All right, Camilo Montoya-Galvez, once again walking us through several topics there. Thank you so much for your time today.